Hey guys, and welcome back to an episode of Off the Shelf. I'm your host, Ronin Time HD, and this week, what we found off the shelf was...
No, お前知らねえだろ。こいつとっても強いんだぜ。
このざまだ。だから言わねえこっちゃねえ。6人ぐらいじゃ手不足だ。
ところであの6人とてもうまく料理されてたな。あんないい腕を持ったやつはこの近くにはおめえしかいねえ。あんまりこっちに来るんじゃねえ。
Yojimbo, released in 1961. This is an Akira Kurosawa film starring, of course, Toshiro Mifune, I believe is how you say his name. This is a samurai action film with slight comedic undertones. And I will say, if you already didn't know, this film is not only influential in the samurai scene, it is also incredibly influential in the westerns. If you don't know, obviously samurai and western films have a bunch of connections. If you don't know, Fistful of Dollars, which is the first movie of the Dollars trilogy, probably the most influential trilogy in western history, started because Fistful of Dollars was a ripoff of Yojimbo. Right? Clint Eastwood even said 10 pages in when he was reading the script for when he was auditioning for the character, he's like, man, this is just an obvious ripoff of Yojimbo, right? Basically just Western Yojimbo. And there was a whole thing there, but back into this movie just trying to say how influential it was in basically a bunch of genres, including Toshiro's character, who is the samurai with no name, I suppose, right? You could call him that. He is wildly influential in the portrayal of the modern cowboy / modern samurai archetype, right? They're kind of gruff. They don't really talk too much. They're kind of sarcastic. You know what I mean? They kind of have like little jabs and little one-liners here and there that they say every now and again as just kind of little snappy lines, right? One thing I really like about this movie is how fast it moves. Like, you know, I'm so used to really long Kurosawa movies or Kurosawa movies that really take their time, and I don't even really have a problem with that. I think it's done very well because, I mean, it's Kurosawa. Like, let's be real, he always does it well. But I think in this case of it being just like a really fast-paced, like, action movie, in a sense, it's not like fucking Fast and the Furious or anything, but it's got action in it. You know, and it is mostly just an entertaining movie. I remember I watched a special feature, and Kurosawa said a great film has to be enjoyable, right? To some degree, a great film has to at least be enjoyable, and a great film can both be understood and enjoyed, and it doesn't need to be super complex to be a good movie. And I think this is that. It's not really trying to say anything, but it doesn't need to because it's just that damn entertaining. It's that entertaining to see Toshiro's character just, like, come up with different ways to get out of these situations or different ways to, like, play both sides, you know, how to get out of a bind. You know, how you kind of figure out halfway through the movie that even though he's trying to be, like, this tough bad guy, right, he kind of isn't. You know, he's just putting up that act of being a bad guy. He's actually a good guy because there's, like, this family that is being basically like taken advantage of and abused by two of the like evil gangs in the town. So he saves them and like tells them to run away, right? And to like get out of there. And he even while he's doing it, he's trying to like act all tough, right? But he didn't need to do that. So Toshiro's like his character's motives. So even at the beginning of the movie, they kind of already established that he's a decent guy because at the beginning, he sees that there's some bad shit going on. These gangs, they're running roughshod through this town, right? The only guy who's making money in the town is the coffin maker, right? He's the only guy that's making money. So he's like, well, there's some bad shit going on. I'm gonna fix it. I'm gonna fucking kill all these guys, right? I'm gonna clean up the streets by killing all these shitbags, right? I'm gonna kill all of them. And he does, right? So him helping the family, I guess, further establishes that he's a good guy. Because all the money they give him, he gives to that family, right? He doesn't. At the beginning of the movie, he's penniless, and at the end of the movie, he's penniless. It was never about the money. It was always just about taking care of those scumbags, the scum of the streets, right? However, another thing that I really liked is how effortless he was, and how I love how much they establish how good of a swordsman he is with not. They don't do too much with it. One thing I really like is that they really prove a point as to why both sides are so desperate to hire him as a bodyguard, right? There's a scene where he kills like 3 dudes in 10 seconds, right? Chops one dude's arm off, slices 2 other guys, and then there's a scene, of course, where he goes to the coffin maker and he goes, make 2 coffins. Well, actually, make it 3, right? And that's an iconic scene, which, if you think that sounds familiar, was ripped off in A Fistful of Dollars, that coffin exchange. Obviously, it was a little different, but it was basically the exact same. Either way, I think one thing also that I really enjoyed about it was just the characters, right? There were so many unique characters that I thought were really enjoyable, that were really funny, I think were really despicable sometimes, like... But by despicable, I mean, like, they're just, like, dipshits, right? Like, I think the bad guys was that there was the guy with the gun who was, like, really full of himself, and he was kind of smarter than all the other thugs. Like, all the other guys were just kind of, like, mindless dumbasses. But he was actually kind of smart, and he was kind of dangerous because he wasn't an idiot like the rest of them. He had a gun, too, and everybody else had a sword. So, obviously, don't bring a sword to a gunfight, right? Don't bring a knife to a gunfight. They told you that in Indiana Jones. Either way... he's dangerous. But even when I say that, he did bring a sword to a gunfight, and he won. Toshiro's character won because he outsmarted him. It wasn't just about brute strength. It was about the wits. Because he had been given a dagger after he had escaped from being tortured by the bad guys because they had realized what he was doing, like trying to play both sides, and they were like torturing him because they thought that he knew where the family had ran off to, but clearly he didn't, right? He just told them to run off, but they wanted to know where they were, and they were torturing him. But then he got away, and he had been like hanging out at a restaurant with the restaurant owner, and the restaurant owner had given him a dagger, and he had used that dagger. So he had the gun. He was gonna shoot him, right? But then he threw the dagger. Like, he had hid the dagger, and he threw it at his hand, and he went, oh, and the gun went up, and he was shooting in the air, and that gave him enough time to slash him, right? He took all the guys out, and obviously he outsmarted him. It was the wits, which is what I said earlier. And the whole movie's like that, right? The whole movie's just like him figuring out clever ways to get out of a situation or ways to get into a situation, right? I don't know. I just really liked it, and I am glad that there is actually a sequel to this movie so we can see more of Toshiro's character, because I think he was a really enjoyable character. The way the movie ended, it kind of ends like a serial would end, right? His adventure's over, the movie's over, and at the end he just goes, see ya, like, see you around. So at the end of the movie, he walks out of town like he walked into it at the beginning, which I like. But also, it's kind of like a bit of like a serial, you know what I mean? Because the next story could just open with him doing the same thing. He's drifting, going along from town to town, and he finds another town with some bad shit going on, and he's there to fix it, right? Like the last one. Which I am a little sad they only made a sequel. Like, they only made 1 sequel. I still think that you could have made a bunch of movies with this concept, because it's so simple, yet it's so effective. Obviously, that's not the way Kurosawa does stuff. At least I don't believe so. I still think I like the ending, because it does leave it very open-ended for a sequel. And for sure, they could have made 10 of these movies, man. They could have just had the samurai with no name going from town to town, cleaning up the streets. That's all the movies could be about. And if they just came up with new shitbags for him to kill, with new conflicts, it would have been just as engaging, in my opinion. I mean, people like Clint Eastwood cowboy movies. They're all basically the same concept, right? Just with different conflicts, I guess, to bring a similar comparison. Either way, I'm yapping my jaw a little bit here. I'm just gonna wrap things up. I personally believe that you should go out and watch this movie. I think it's an absolute classic. I think if you're a fan of samurai movies, if you're a fan of action movies, if you're a fan of westerns, because as I said, a bunch of people, like a bunch of American guys who watched this movie back in the day, I guarantee you, because Sergio Leone, an Italian spaghetti western director, he went, man, this would be a good western. And then Clint Eastwood was like, man, this would be a good western. So if you like westerns, it's very similar, akin to a western, inspired some of the best westerns. Absolutely, you should go see this movie as well. Or you should just watch it in general because it's a great movie. Either way, I'm continuing to yap here. What would I rate this film, you may ask? I would rate this film an 8.5 out of 10. And, yeah, I think I said what I needed to say. I think I've said my piece. So, guys, I hope you liked this video. Share it with friends. Subscribe. Turn those notifications on. Comment down below and I bet you liked it. And I've been RTMHD, off to clean up the streets. So I was doing some research on this movie, right? And I didn't know that there was a sequel to this film. I thought it was just one and done, right? But when I saw there was a sequel, I'm like, oh, that's cool. I didn't really know Kurosawa made sequels. I didn't really think he was that kind of director. But then I learned that he made the sequel. It wasn't going to be a sequel. He was making this movie that was based on like a book, right? And then he saw how popular Yojimbo was, and he's like, you know what? I'm gonna change the script of of my next movie to incorporate Toshiro's character and make it a sequel because it's so popular. You know, why not capitalize on it? And obviously that's a normal thing to do. You know, if something's popular, capitalize on it. You know, but I didn't know Kurosawa made sequels, so I guess that was just a pleasant surprise. Let me know if you want to see me review it down in that comment section.